How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk, guys. Today we're going to talk about positional leadership. So basically people that rely on their position to gain compliance. Now, granted, guys, your position could even be as a CO, social worker supervisor. We could cross into admin management. I mean, the key is everybody has the chance to be a leader. But with that said, I want to make sure people don't play on their position to work on getting people to comply. It's not about the position. It's about your influence. And a big portion of what we're going to be talking about today comes from this beautiful book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. I'm actually working on a training course right now that will be given out to our leaders in corrections. And again, it's modeled off this great book, guys. If you just get a chance, 5 Levels of Leadership. It's just a phenomenal book. Now, these books are written for the business world, so I read them, and then I try to make it relatable to us in corrections. And believe it or not, guys, they do apply. Trust and believe they do apply. So today's focus is going to be on positional leadership. Now, guys, if you haven't, please check out my sponsors. We have American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to get a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, and they've been with me for over a decade. So they're definitely supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. And I also have my books that are on the market. We have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. This book is used for training all across the country. It's a great book that fills that gap in which, you know, a lot of agencies, they don't offer inmate manipulation courses. So this book will help the agencies fulfill that gap. We also have Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. This book is loaded with tons of nuggets. I got passages, about 159 passages, and they're supported with 159 quotes from other professionals in the field. It's just a lot of knowledge in this book. So if you guys get a chance, that's also available on Amazon. The link to that is in the description. We also got the Tier Talk mugs, as you can see. I have the link to that in the description as well. I actually have one. It's upstairs. I should have brought it down. Wasn't thinking. And we also have, and guys, these are doing very well, the posters. 18 signs you're overly involved with an inmate. We have a lot of agencies asking for these posters. I would recommend that you get them in bulk because that's where it's cheaper, because it's cheaper for us to make them and then get them out to you guys. And the link to that is in the description. Actually, it's an email. You're going to email somebody and they'll work with you and however many you need, and they'll work out a price. But again, 18 signs you're overly involved with an inmate. And that beautiful young lady is my daughter, Mia. She's trying to model. Her next job will be Wheel of Fortune. All right, so let's see. Let me get Russ on. What's up, Russ?
Anthony, how's it going, sir?
Hey, Russ, you're not muted.
I know the only person that would be muting me would be you.
Yeah, no, that's never happening. You're too scary to mute. Hey, Russ, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I have also been a senior juvenile correctional officer. I currently work for a private vending company that works for a local jail and a local probation department where we do reentry and rehabilitation work with various inmates and probationers. I am also a longtime contributor at Tier Talk.
Yes, and also Keepers of Chaos. How's that group going?
So my Keepers of Chaos, it's really kind of taken off a lot in the past week, inexplicably. Maybe not so much so. One of my guys out there, Joe Mosley, he does a lot of behind the scenes recruiting for it. Basically, Keepers of Chaos is the place you want to be if you are serious about this profession, serious about learning more about it, becoming more effective, and being able to deal with the hostility day in and day out that we all are exposed to.
Yes, the world of corrections, the world of working in a prison or a jail. Okay, guys, so we have a little bit to cover today. Now, granted, we've covered this before a few years ago. We kind of did the whole 5 levels of leadership, but today we're going to focus on being a positional leader. I think it matters, especially in this profession. We don't really want positional leaders. We want people to move up and build relationships with people and then, kind of have influence, because that's the key. The key here is that you don't want to get people to comply or move forward by claiming your position. I'm a sergeant, do as I tell you to do, or I'm a lieutenant, do as I tell you to do. It's more about gaining influence, which really is centered on how you build a relationship with the people you supervise. So me and Russ are going to dive in with 4 positives that come with being a positional leader, and then we're going to have 8 negatives that you got to be aware of when you kind of think that you need to remain into that positional leadership, which is not what we want to do. But to make sure we're on the same page, hey, Russ, real quick, how would you define a positional leader? Do you have a story of somebody who may have tried to have been a positional leader with you?
Well, yeah, a positional leader is just someone who ultimately is reliant upon what it is that's on their collar, that piece of brass, be it a chevron, be it a bar, be it double bars, or, just some title that they've eked out, that they've promoted to. And they are relying on, the structure, the chain of command, and so forth, to enforce what it is that they're telling people to do, rather than being reliant on their own skills on getting people to buy into their vision and to actually, follow along.
Guys, that's 100% what I would lean on too. People that feel that in order to gain compliance, they're quick to throw out their position. Like I mentioned, I'm a sergeant, I'm a lieutenant. You got to do as I want you to do because of my position. The problem with that, when you play the positional leadership, is maybe there'll be some people who will do what you expect of them because you do have that position of authority. But having said that, they don't really want to do it because they want to. They do it because they have to. And you're going to see how much that's going to limit you as you rely on that, because eventually people will just start giving you their least, and we'll get to that. But let's talk about the positives first, because there are positives. So the first positive I have right now, and I'll have Russ go first and I'll compliment it, is a leadership position is usually given to people because they have leadership potential. Now, granted, we do work in corrections, and there are tests that could solidify people in a position, but there are higher level positions that are by appointment only. And there are a lot of people that may seek those higher level positions, i.e. Administration. So at that point there, this is no longer about a test. This is more about, can I trust you to carry out the needs of the agency? So having said that, Russ, a leadership position is usually given to people because they have leadership potential. What's your thoughts on that? Because that is a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing. We would hope that, someone hasn't been able to, wrangle that position out because of politics, or because of some sort of nepotism and stuff. Corrections, like everything else, is not going to be perfect. And, it's not always going to be fair. But what we want to be able to see is we want to have people have a chance to further themselves and to have a chance to grow, and have other people that are, upwards in that stream of command, to be able to see what they are going to do with it, to be able to have an idea, okay, what is this person's style going to be like? What are they going to have as far as what strengths can they bring to the table? Are there any weaknesses that maybe we're unaware of? And, it gives that person a chance to actually learn, grow, and hopefully be able to take on the full mantle of what that position encompasses.
Rush, you said so many key things there. John Maxwell, he says the best leaders promote people into leadership based on leadership potential, not on politics, seniority, credentials, or convenience. That's powerful because, again, when you start getting into the appointments, now, again, a lot of places are going to have tests. You do well on the tests, and that may secure you into a supervisory role. But at one point, there will be positions where it goes beyond a test. It's going to be an interview process, and there is some level of discretion because, again, they need to make sure they have the right person leading higher level operations, if you will. And there is some level of discretion because, having said that, even though there is some level of technical stuff that you must know to get those higher positions, this is more about managing the intangibles. Let's say morale would be one of them. Morale would be something that's extremely important that you may not be able to, You may not be able to figure that out on a regular test. So you're going to go ahead and interview and try to get a feeling for what this person's about. Oh, hold on. Thank you, babe. Let me just take a drink of water. Wow, that water is good. It's really good. Let me just take another sip of that water. Shameless plug. Actually, I think that was tap. No, I'm joking. Hey, so having said that, I mean, it is a great opportunity, guys. When I got appointed as a superintendent, now, guys, this is not just a test. This is a series of interviews. I knew that when I got appointed that someone saw the potential in me to be something great, or else I wouldn't be trusted with the positions I'm in. I mean, now I'm an associate, probably working my way to be an administrator. So each time I move up, I go through a series of interviews. I don't take a written test anymore. And when you go through the series of interviews, there is some discretion. You know, the people that interview on the panel, they're looking for things. And it goes beyond just answering the question. You know, it goes way beyond that. It goes about literally your potential. I always tell people when you go out for an interview and you're interviewing for these higher positions, the resume is a look backwards. That's what gets you to the interview. But when you do the interview, it's not really about gloating and all the things you've done yesterday. It's really about telling them how they can trust you and what you need to do tomorrow. People don't know that. When you're going up for that leadership position, it's all about your potential. Where can this person be in, let's say, 2 or 3 years? What can they do for us in 2 or 3 years? So again, a lot of people will go on an interview and look to brag about the stuff they've done yesterday. Hey, you already got the interview. That's good. That's yesterday. That's a resume. We saw that already. But tell us right now why we should hire you in regards to where you will be tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, for me, an interview was always a chance to highlight my potential. And the people that hire me into those positions, I would like to think that they see potential in me, because right off the bat, guys, the position I'm being hired into, I got to learn that position. I'm not going to come from the position I'm in now thinking that, okay, well, I know everything I know about that next position. No, I have to let the people that are bringing me in know that I have the potential to learn that position. I mean, that's the key. The key is letting the people that are interviewing know that, hey, if you give me this position, I can grow into it. I can meet the needs of the position. I'm willing to be open-minded. I'm willing to learn. So the potential matters. Would you agree with that, Russ?
No, most certainly. The thing, or the way that I would always look at it is you should use the things that you've done in the past to show what your potential is for those things that they're going to want you to do in the future. And if you are blind as to what those things are, maybe you shouldn't be, sitting in that seat giving this interview. You should be prepared enough that you're gonna understand what it is they want, and being able to pull up those real world examples is going to be helpful. But you also ought to be able to articulate the things in their vision that they want you to invest yourself in, to take it from there, to be able to follow what their compass is.
Yeah, and guys, dead on, Russ, dead on. And guys, if you spend so much time during this interview trying to rattle off your past successes, it's going to come out arrogant. Because yes, maybe some of that stuff was needed to get you into the position you're in, but there's still a lot more to learn. And if you're relying on that past, to literally gloat and say, yeah, I'm the best pick for what you have ahead, I think that's a bad way to do it. I think what you should do on those interviews is, we already know what got you there. Now let's talk about your ability to learn and grow into the next position. But having said that, again, first good point right now is the fact that you were given an opportunity to lead. And that means that someone believes in you. Someone believes in your potential to grow. That's the key. Somebody believes in your potential to grow. That's pretty freaking amazing. Definitely a good highlight. Okay, so the next part, and I'll have Russ go first. A leadership position means authority is recognized. Now, guys, we will talk about the negatives of some of these things, but let's just stick on the positive first, because this has some negative to it. But let's just go with the positive first, and we'll come back later on for the negative. But Russ, a leadership position means authority is recognized. How is that a good thing?
Okay, so obviously, really, especially in corrections and other law enforcement, what we tend to see is this paramilitary hierarchy. And that hierarchy, it just means that, basically we have these ranks. They're established positions. They're labels that we use to know where we are inside that rank structure and what our particular part of the mission entails. So as we look at that, everyone knows that, an officer is lower than a sergeant, that a sergeant is lower than a lieutenant, and on up the chain. Now, it changes a little bit, of course, from department to department. Some places have corporals or majors and that kind of thing. But overall, we know what structure is. We know, where the buck stops, so to speak, if you will. And that's good because then we're able to rely on what our position is and to not supersede anyone else, and to be able to give the proper direction to whoever those below us are.
Yeah, and guys, if I can add on that, by the way, Russ, that was even better than the book. But if I can add on that, guys, yeah, when you're given a leadership position, someone is giving you a level of authority that's supposed to help you with accomplishing your job. Now, mind you, guys, ultimately, you want to gain the permission of your people when you become a leader. 100%. This is all about influence. I don't want to play my position all the time unless I have to. If I'm playing my position, it's because at one point I'm being forced to enforce the rules. And I'm trying my best to gain influence so I can go ahead and get people to want to comply as opposed to play on my position and build reluctant compliance. I think that makes sense. So having said that, I'm working my best to influence people to move forward. Now, granted, kind of like to give me a little bit of a kickstart when you get those higher positions. Yeah, you get a little bit of authority. That's to keep things moving. Now, again, if you're going to lean on that position for that level of authority, like the boss mentality, that doesn't last long. Believe it or not, immediately it may work a little bit. It could, but it's going to wear thin, pretty quick because people will stop seeing that authority and they'll start seeing you. It's no longer about Russ the lieutenant. Russ is an ass or Gangi's an ass. I don't care what level they're at. But again, it may work for a second, but don't think it's long lasting. But having said that, we'll play into that a little bit more later. Having that authority is great because that means someone trusts you to give you that level of authority over others. And one of the things I want to mention, guys, is I don't want this to be controversial, but a lieutenant told me something a while back that I felt played out even as I grew into my positions now in administration. He said, believe it or not, a good test of who someone's going to be when they have that position of authority is how they treat the inmates. So to elaborate on that, I have worked with people, I've worked with officers that have literally wore the uniform and pretty much made every inmate know they were a CO. You do what I tell you to do because I'm the CO. So the moment the inmate put up a little of a challenge, the person went right to the uniform and said, I'm the CO. You do as I expected, as opposed to trying to, build some level of influence and only play that card out if need be. Kind of like as a last exhaustive measure. Now, the lieutenant that told me that is he said, here's the thing, Gangi, when people start playing that route as their automatic, immediate reaction to someone that challenges just a minute part of their authority, watch what happens when they move up and they start supervising you. The moment you have a question, they will go back and refer back to that supervisory position. So it's very good to kind of learn, I guess, how to deal with that level of authority when dealing with the inmate population. Again, I'm not comparing us to inmates, but I think there's a good perspective of how someone treats the inmates with that level of authority and then what happens if you give them more. Russ, I got to get your opinion on that. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first of all, I think that that's absolutely spot on.
Ooh.
The way that you use the weight of the authority or your position as it's been given to you on the way that you treat an inmate is very much going to reveal what your whole philosophy is about treating people in general. Having said that, there is an element within corrections sometimes that thinks that that means that we should let inmates get away with things, that we should not hold them accountable. We would always hold our personnel accountable, so we should do the same for our inmates. But I think it's a matter of the degree as to the reasons that you're doing it, the purity of your purpose, if you will, for actually holding someone accountable, but not being reliant on the position. It's a matter of your position requires that of you. That's a way of holding yourself accountable to that, which flows downstream from there.
And Rush, can I tell you something? When I look to gain influence with the population, the MA population, and I think it's something I've been able to utilize as I moved up, is I go by expectations over rules. I let people know what I expect, and then they kind of try to build things from the inside out. And if I have to enforce the rules, then that means I'm going back to my position. I try to make the rules the last thing. For me, when I see rules, I'm playing the position out. That means if I'm going back and I'm enforcing rules, then there's going to be consequences to that. And at that point, maybe I have to play my position, but it's usually at the back end of an exhausted effort. And I want to mention something too. One more thing. When you're given this authority, and again, you're trying to get to that permission level where you get to work and build relationships with your people. It's great when the people that you supervise see you using that authority for good. I got this new position of authority. How do I use that to help the team? How do I use that to help us reach whatever goal it is that we're trying to reach? That's always a good benefit from having that authority and trying to make that effective, change that may be needed. So that's always a plus, because right off the bat, that was the first thing I did when I started moving up. It's like, okay, I got these positions. I got this new position. Now, how can I use that to help the people that I supervise? And I think that's a great question to ask yourself when you're initially given that position of authority. It's like, how can I help others in this new position I'm in? Because again, by building that relationship, that's how you gain influence. All right, this is good. A leadership position is an invitation to grow as a leader. Now, this is intentional, but Russ, what's your thoughts on this? Because this is definitely one of the reasons why I enjoyed moving up, because it increased my perspective. So I saw more at the higher level than I've ever seen when I was just on the front line level, but it was intentional.
Yes, well, there's two parts to it, of course. One is the invitation as it's given. This is the chance for those in the upstream to be able to pick someone out in order to see what they're going to do, as we talked about before. But it's also about, your reception of that invitation to see for yourself, and to them, how you're going to respond to it. What is it that you're going to do that's going to, be a Kickstarter for other things, and how you're going to impact that. If you're an impact player, what is it that you're going to impact? Are you going to impact morale? Is it going to be more about safety and security? Is it going to be about, being able to help other people? In other words, cultivating the talent that's out there. There are a lot of different things that we can specialize in. I think that's just, one portion of it. How is it that we are going to respond to this invitation? In what manner is it that we are going to step up to the plate, so to speak?
Yeah, and I want to add on that, Russ. You got my mind thinking right here. So I want to add a couple of things to that. One thing is for people that, and this is going to come up the thoughts of Maxwell as well. Leadership is always about growth, so it's a process. You don't become a leader in a day. It's a daily process, and it's always ongoing. A lot of people that are positional and thinking, once they're given a higher position, they think that they have arrived. I got it. I'm here. I reached the destination. And leadership, I mean, John Maxwell could explain it better, but leadership is not about reaching a destination and saying you've arrived. It's about, realizing you're still on a journey to learn. Now, a lot of people, when they grow into as a leader and they grow into the leadership position, the one thing that they never ask themselves, which they should, is they should always ask themselves, how can I be better? What is it that I can do with me that can make me a better leader? Usually what they do is they want to go out with this new position. They want to change this. They want to change that. They want to do this. They want to do that. But never once do they look inwards and say, what can I do with me first? To make sure that, I'm where I need to be. Where do I need to grow? And to be honest with you guys, for me, taking this leadership position I got now, the opportunities to grow are there. They're there, but you have to be intentional. You have to look for them, and you have to want them. So if I notice, this is a thing too, and we'll probably get to it in the negative side, but just in case, I just want to add a thought that comes to mind is if you're not growing, actually, you know what? We'll touch about when it's negative because I'm looking at it right now. We're going to revisit again. It's a thought that I could express later on. But having said that, guys, the positive thing is the higher you move up, the more you can see. And if you're intentional, I mean, literally, as you experience things, you're insightful. You try to learn from what it is that you experience. You're intentional. You're chasing after it. There's so much more that you can learn as you move up each level of leadership. So definitely something positive. Now, the last thing right now, because remember, guys, positional leadership is not really going to have a lot of positives because you don't want to stay at this level. So this only has 4 positives, and most of the other stuff, it's going to be 8 negatives. It's going to have more negatives than positive because you don't want to stay at this level for too long. And again, I want you to know something. Each level is to increase our influence. So the positional level really is where it all starts. So that's kind of, where we're at. So the next thing, and this is the last positive before we go into the negatives, is a leadership position allows potential leaders to shape and define their leadership. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? I agree with that, obviously.
So when I look at that, there is something to be said for the position itself. I think that when you look at it, you're able to take the natural power of the title that you've been given and be able to find a way to make it fit your natural talents and maybe in some ways even those things which are perhaps your weaknesses, if you will. I think that when we look at, the way we play into this, we always want to try and capitalize, though, on the talent side of it. We always want to be able to rely on true leadership, not from the positional aspect. One way that I've always tried to look at it is this, is if I have to fall back to the positional level, I've failed. All right. That's not to say that it isn't going to happen. That's to say that it is going to happen, but somehow we failed. Did the person below us that we had to rely on that in order to discipline them or to fire them or whatever it is, they failed too. But I think that we should always try and find a way to be that natural leader, to not have to rely on the positional aspect. And by looking at it as a failure, if you will, because that is what it is, then you're able to try and actually take on that mantle to be able to do that shaping and defining of what your leadership means. I think it's a way to hold yourself accountable for those things and to try and pave the way for future successes. Obviously, not everything is going to be optimal, though. There are going to be failures, which are obviously going to be beyond your span of control, but I think we need to treat them as if they were within our span of control.
Yeah, and Russ, let me add on that again, just spot on. So for me, my advice here is when you're given a leadership position, it is a powerful thing because it's a chance for you to kind of understand who you are, who do you want to be in this profession. But even before that, when I first entered this profession, I stuck to my core values. I knew that this was going to be a profession I'd remain in, and I didn't want to play around with it. I wanted to take it seriously, and I wanted to connect myself to a good inner circle that can help me grow and keep me on that professional route. Now, mind you, I was never perfect. I made a lot of mistakes, but the intent was always good. I mean, I was never negligent. My intent was always to do what's best for the people I work around, or what's best for what the agency expects of me. And if I made a mistake and people would ask me, I would always be able to justify what I felt would have been the better interest. Has it been a perfect choice? No, but at that time, that's what I thought was the better choice. Now, granted, when you cross into the leadership position, a lot of who you are is gonna go into that. You're not all of a sudden going to become a leader and then 180. No, you take what you've learned and who you are, and you bring that into the next position. So again, the three things that you want to look at, and it is mentioned in his book as well, is basically, who are you? What type of leader do you want to be? And that really comes from your values, because values are actionable behaviors. It's what people could see you carrying it out every day. And when you ask people what it is that they expect from the leaders, they want a leader that models the right behavior. They want a leader that walks the walk. I mean, 100%. I want someone, you're telling me what to do, but I want you to do it too. Like, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I want to make sure that whatever values you believe in, I can see you acting those out every day. And speaking of values, that's the next part. What are your values? Your ethical values, like, what do you believe is right and wrong, and why? How do you define success? Because there are values in success. Like, what road do you want to take to get there? And then relationship values, like as you move up, you have to realize something. The power of any leader really goes by their relationships with the people that they lead. So you need to define that. Are you going to be a leader who manipulates their people to gain compliance, or are you going to be a leader who really has your people's best interest in mind? So having those values, the ethical values, the relationship values, and then also your success values. And the last thing, as Russ was touching on, is what type of leadership practices are you going to commit yourself to? Like, what are the things that you feel you need to do to make sure that you earn the trust of your people? For me, I want to serve my people. So I do whatever I can to make sure that I do what's best for my people. So what are my practices? It's always filtered through nothing selfish. It's always filtered through a selfless model that says, at the end of the day, what can I do more? I mean, that literally is a great way to end your day and start the next. Could I have done anything more today? And then you start the next day with doing whatever it is you got to do more. But again, I think that is a great, what do you call it? That's a great high point when you become a leader. That's when you get that position, it's great to kind of get ready and start defining the leader you want to be. Because having said that, guys, when you initially grab that leadership position, people are watching you and you're setting your foundation. And if you come in weak and you come in selfish, and even if you want to change later on, you just made that road harder. And I will tell you something right now, and this is a good point too, Russ. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. If as a leader, right, if I spend my energy trying to help others, and when I say help others, guys, I'm still filtering that through being productive. I'm not saying I'm getting manipulated. I'm saying I'm helping others because at the end of the day, I want to be a resource for my team to be productive. Now, if they see me as that person that will fight for them and try to give them the resources that they need, if I make mistakes, they help me. They trust me. So once you build relationships with people and you do your best to serve your people, even when you make a mistake, your people will forgive you, as opposed to coming in selfish and then wanting you to fail. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Would you agree with that? Because we haven't been perfect in our career.
No, we haven't been perfect in our careers, but I think that, through a love of what the career means, though, is, we're there and we're not being compliant in what we're doing for our bosses or anyone else. We're being committed in, trying to, always move the chains forward, always trying to be better. I think one of the things that we should, be doing with those that we're supervising is we should be trying to, clone a portion of ourselves into them. I guess it's for someone else to decide whether or not, that on my part, for instance, is that, hubris, or is that gravitas? I think I was a pretty good supervisor. I know I was a pretty damn good cop. I always wanted to be able to bring out those talents in other people and pass everything that I had along. And so that's what a responsible leader does, though. It's not just about the mission for the day. It's about seeing what the mission for the future is, because we're going to need talent in the future. We're going to need to fill positions with people that can handle it and be able to pass on to other people those same skill sets.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, that's why we got to spend a lot of effort in retaining our people right now, because we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that, because right now we could spend all our effort in recruiting new people, but if you don't have that balance with the people that can actually translate what Russ just said, you got to spend effort in retaining the seniors, because they can translate what Russ just said. Russ, that was spot on. I agree with that. So let's go to the downside. There's 8 things that are downside of remaining. Now, guys, this really deals with remaining in that position. So what do we mean by that? The next step above positional level is building relationships. So as you work on your position, your effort should always be, as we just mentioned, going to level 2, building relationships. But for people who want to remain in that position and then maybe skip over level 2, building relationships, and then going right to productivity, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. So this right now is the downside if you think that you could just stay in the position and use that to move people forward and then try to be productive. So the first thing we got right now is, I agree with this 100%. I've worked under this. But leaders who rely on position to lead often devalue people. Russ, I'd like you to go first on these, and then I'll comment after.
So, that's really for some leadership styles, the default position is that I am who I am. And by virtue of the weight that's on my collar, you are less than me. And because you are less than me, I can, in any manner that I see fit, direct you to do things in a manner, whether it's safe or not. And you have to do what I tell you to do. And so that's a philosophy. Is it a good philosophy? Obviously not. But a person that has fallen to that point where they don't know how to naturally lead and how to get people to follow them, out of, love and loyalty and duty and honor, rather than fear or plain old duty, which just means I have to do the minimum possible, then that person has become a failure, in my opinion.
I agree. And guys, Maxwell says it, but I'm sure we'd agree. Being a leader is not a noun, it's a verb, it's active. Having said that, your job is to take people somewhere. Influence is literally the ability to gain followers. Same thing as influence is leadership. That's what it is. One, define leadership, it's about influence. If you don't have value for people, they're not going to trust you to take them anywhere. And that's what we're about. We're about bringing our people somewhere. There's no longer, and we'll probably get to this, I'm sure, but being the only person on top is lonely, because leaders don't do that. Leaders bring people with them. I worked with positional leaders, people that would brag all day that they were administration, and they would be quick to remind you of your position, but not in a way to uplift you, but in a way to remind you of where you stand. So here I am. If I'm constantly saying my position above you, then where am I putting you? Below me. So again, people that decide to do that, because usually they're insecure most of the time. They don't want to be challenged. So here I am, me and Russ are chatting. Let's say Russ is my lieutenant and I'm the officer, and Russ wants something done. And the moment I ask a question, Russ is quick to do something subtle, like, because sometimes it may not be always overt. Sometimes it may not be, I'm the lieutenant, do as I said. Sometimes as you go to speak, they just tap the bar, the reminder of what that rank is. What could be just as annoying, because and people have done it, Russ. You know that. They may do it with a little smirk on their face or something, but there's a message there that's powerful. It means I got my voice has more power than yours because of my position. And at the end of the day, What I say goes. And then what does that person think about that's in the lower position? I have no value. You don't even let me speak. So when there's a concern and I go to address it with you, all of a sudden you point to this, which makes me think that, here's the thing. If you remind me of your position, that you're higher up than me, that makes me think about my position. Now it's position versus position. So what's going to happen is this person becomes afraid to speak. They don't feel valued. And I will tell you one thing: if this person's a good person, this frontline person, and maybe one day they're looking to secure a leadership position, you're going to push them out. You're going to push them out. But the moment you point at your rank, to me, it's the most insulting thing, especially if I'm in the process of saying something, and instead of you listening to what I have to say because you know that you can't challenge my argument, you try to shut me up by pointing what's on your collar. Russ, have you seen that? Come on, I know you've seen that, Russ.
Yeah.
Have you done it, Russ?
No, I would not say that I have done that, but I have been on the other side and then asked, and I probably shouldn't tell on myself. I said, well, take it off then, see what happens. But
there you go.
But I'm a conflictual kind of guy, you know. I'm passionate, you know, sometimes to my detriment. But you know, I never wanted someone to lead. I always wanted someone that I could be loyal to, that I would follow into battle without question. And sometimes it was hard to find leaders for me that I thought were worthy and deserving of that. And once again, that's for someone else to determine whether that's gravitas or hubris.
Yeah, that's all right. So hold on. That was the people that let me get the next one. Let's see. So this is positional leaders feed on politics. Now, guys, the definition of politics here is about power and control. So basically, there are going to be positional leaders, and it may be quoted in Maxwell, but look for control over contribution, which means at the end of the day is they just want power, and the more they move up, the more resources they have, the more people they have, the bigger the area. And at the end of the day, they wind up actually building silos, because when you have leaders that are moving up just to build turf, if you will, or build resources, they wind up competing with other leaders who wind up thinking like, hey, yo, I have to go. I need to also be protective of what I have because this guy's starting to infiltrate my areas. And here's the sad thing, guys. How does this relate in corrections? I see this amongst different departments, believe it or not. Sometimes, custody and rehabilitation could be arguing because of the resources that are needed to run both. And then what happens here, instead of us trying to solve the problem in a way that we're both kind of working towards each other to work together, the problem is we wind up just basically stopping everything because we don't want to move. And then I've seen supervisors or whatever say literally, well, you know what? If I don't move, nothing happens in this place. Like, what are you doing? Well, because I'm the one. I got all these people under me. So if you want to do this and I don't want to do it, watch what happens when I go back and tell the people I supervise that we ain't moving forward with anything. And it's like, whoa. So instead of you trying to help us in a pro-social way, you have built power. And instead of you contributing, you control. And sad to say, I've seen that happen, Russ. I've seen people that have literally become supervisors, have been given a lot of power. And what they do is they love having the power. They love the perk behind that, the perk behind having that power. And the moment someone challenges them and they don't agree with something, they will go back and advertise how much power they have in an effort to manipulate or intimidate. Maybe that would be a better word. But what's your thoughts on that, Russ? The positional leaders that feed on politics. You've seen that, right?
Yeah, and I'm about to give you a deep dive right into it.
Let me get that, Russ.
What's that?
I want to hear it.
Okay, here we go then. So the part that you brought up, particularly there about departments, that's very true. Throughout a lot of CDCR, we would have what I would call, and was often called actually, cars or subcars or buses or trucking concerns or whatever it was, right? And all of these things have different nexuses involved. Sometimes it would be departmental, and people will build their little cliques or little cars based on the department that they were in, sometimes in the unit they were on. And in worse circumstances, sometimes it was based on who was golf buddies with who. Sometimes, unfortunately, it could be based on ethnicities. You never knew just what car or subcar sometimes you were addressing, and sometimes you could end up unintentionally in a minefield if you weren't watching what you were doing. And the problem with all of those things is power then comes positionally and then secondarily from association. And that's a real problem, right? Because instead of following the chain of command, where it is positional, now we've skewed it all the way over from positional and to being in whatever affiliation that you're affiliated with. And that can be very destructive because that destroys morale. It means that you're reliant not just on what's there on your collar, but who your golf buddy is every single weekend. And I saw that happen more times than I care to admit. My whole thing is don't rely on that. Don't be, that, what's the term we use all the time? Brown nosing to, simply get there. Be reliant upon your own skill set, your own talents, your sense of duty, and most of all, what your vision and philosophy is. Everything else is detrimental to the department as a whole. And it's going to remain. There's nothing that you or I or anyone can do that's going to cure it. But what we can do is by not engaging in it ourselves, we can take some of the heat out of those things and try and maintain people who have real leadership values and talents rather than those associational and positional type of leadership talents.
Yeah, and guys,
was that a deep enough dive for you?
No, I think it's awesome. I want to add on that too, because guys, it is sometimes competition could be healthy, but we have to watch out with that. There's like a borderline. There is, because when you start devaluing people in the process, or using competition or using your power to influence changes that should be happening for the benefit of everyone, but then now your son have the power to make shit shift to your direction, could be very divisive. It could wind up building silos, if you will, between the departments. And instead of us cooperating, we're literally stuck in this competitive mode. But here's the funny thing. If you look at the value of the competitiveness, if you want to know its value, it's like, what are they fighting over? If they're fighting over, or if they're competing over something that can help everybody grow, and the competition, the process can help that, then maybe we can balance that. But if they're competing for resources, or if they're competing because one department wants to survive, it's not healthy. It's not healthy, because at the end of the day, what's the end result? One department feels minimized and the other department gets more power. We should be doing stuff together that teaches people how to contribute. So again, I'm not against competition. It just has to be healthy. And at the end, what have we learned together as a group when this is done? Because sometimes competition can bring us together, but if we're all in survival mode, that's not competition that's going to help us grow. That's competition that's going to keep us divisive when a winner's decided. Hey, Russ, I went out. I don't know if I went out of order, but did I do this one yet? Where having a leadership position is often misleading?
No, we did not do that one.
Okay, cool. Okay, so again, having a leadership position is often misleading. Can I start off on this one, Russ, real quick?
Absolutely, I'll bet you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So when I moved up, so I jumped from a third shift sergeant, so an overnight sergeant who worked 10 to 6 a.m., so it's a slower shift, and then I jumped right into administration. I realized how quick. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. A lot of people that are on the position below believe they know more about the position above them than the person who's actually doing it. Officers may think they know more than sergeants. Sergeants may think they know more than lieutenants, and everybody thinks they know more than admin until you're finally in the position and you see that there's a lot of moving parts. And trust and believe, there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, just taking the jump from frontline to frontline supervisor, is a big jump, probably the biggest jump you'll take. And then eventually, it should get a little bit easier, but it's still hard. So having said that, I think a lot of people that jump into these positions, they look for perks. Oh, my own parking spot. Oh, the authority to have a little bit more freedom. But what they don't realize, there's a balance to that. There's tolls being paid, if you will. Each time you move up, there's sacrifices being made. I mean, every time I moved up, until I made it into admin, I was giving up some comfortability. I was giving up the days off that I had, the schedule I gotten used to, until eventually I got to the administrative level, after 12 years, and was able to get a 8 to 4 position with weekends off. But having said that, guys, it's actually, it's not what people may think. So for those that go in, want to go into these higher level positions. Sorry, Russ. Those that want to go into these higher level positions, Russ is losing the camera. Hold on.
I'm
guys.
sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. You got to do what you got to do. So for those that are going into these higher level positions, and all they do is they look at the perks of moving up, you're going to find out, guys, that if you sit there and that's your only incentive, when you get into those higher positions and you deal with the bullshit that's happening, sure, you got your own parking spot, but was it really worth it? I mean, Russ, what's your thoughts on leadership positions? I mean, am I right when I say a lot of people that, let's say, frontline will think they know exactly what a sergeant does, exactly what a lieutenant does, and then when they're finally in the position, it's like, whoa, this is not what I thought it would be?
Yeah, I've of course I haven't taken that leap, as it were, but I've had.
You were a sergeant. You were a sergeant.
I was a sergeant, but I mean, there's a bigger gradient, between the levels around there and the administrative ones. For me, it didn't feel like that big of a leap because I was already doing a lot of those things. It seemed, almost second nature. Were there surprises that I encountered? Yeah, almost my very first day, I'd say the one thing is I was not ready for the amount of blowback that I received immediately from the union heads there, telling me that I was a traitor for having, actually promoted. And I was like, man, that was not even on my radar. So you don't know how people are going to react. You don't necessarily appreciate, I don't think, the gravity and the seriousness of the position that you're in, because now you've gone from a more tactical to a little bit more of a strategic position. And but as always, lives are still on the line, but now lives are on the line based on what your more strategic response is going to be to situations. Instead of going in and doing the actual battle, you're telling people, hey, to march in there with those 40 millimeters and we're going to start shooting these guys off the yard. It's a whole new ball of wax. It's easier, in my opinion, to take orders than to give them. I was a great order taker, man. You know what? Point the direction you want me to go. Tell me what you want achieved, and I'll get it done for you. It's another thing to give those orders to people willing like myself and know that you're putting them in harm's way potentially.
Well, Russ, I thought when I said the jump, the reason why I said officer to sergeant may be the biggest jump you got, I kind of held it to the boundary of basically you're supervising your own. So that, I mean, believe it or not, the hardest thing is when you have to start supervising your own people. And that's why I always say the first jump is usually the hardest, because after that, the numbers may increase, but you're still dealing with supervisory skills. I mean, it's more about the intangibles we discussed. So I mean, would you agree though, from an officer to a sergeant, that part is a big leap?
I agree that it is, but only in some ways. Like I say, there's I felt like for one thing for me is I promoted very late on. There was no amount of preparation that I already hadn't done. It was only, actually fulfilling that, filling into that mantle that was different for me, and seeing things from somewhat of a different perspective. So I felt comfortable in it. Were there some things that were difficult? Yes, but I think it would be much harder, in my opinion, only from what I've seen and having several people that I was officers with who eventually promoted to wardens. I think it's harder on them when they first step into those administrative shoes. But
No, I agree, because there's the bigger level of operations that crosses totally out of the departmental that people are used to. Like if I'm an officer, I may strictly focus on being an officer, and then when you get to the administrative level, the operations opens up to you. So I mean, now you're starting to manage departments that you don't really have experience in. Hey Russ, I agree with what I actually agree with what you just said, because I'm thinking about this. Since you said you promoted really late, right? You
yes,
became the senior officer. So you probably were already a leader before you were given a supervisory position anyway, which means that you got the title eventually, but you were already a leader anyway. Because think about it, the later you waited, you were a senior officer. I'll guarantee you people were coming to you anyway, because you were a senior. So you were already leading before you had the title. So all you pretty much did was grab the title, but remain the leader.
absolutely. There were a lot of different situations where I was lucky enough, fortunate enough, maybe I made my own luck, to be in there, talking about what we were going to do with regards to the latest lockdown, which gangs it was going to affect, what the intelligence levels were on the yard. And I mean, it's quite I don't know how to put it exactly, but when you're in there in a room full of administrators, and 4 or 5 of them in a row are asking you the question, not necessarily your lieutenant or your captain. Maybe it's a humbling and awe-inspiring experience. But
It is.
but that just comes from preparation and being really super involved in the process, maybe more so than some sergeants or lieutenants were even.
Yeah, like for me, when I crossed into the supervisory position, I went to another facility. So I think what made it a little bit easier for me was people saw me as the supervisor right away, because they never saw me as their peer, because we didn't work together at that time. So I think what makes the transition hard for some people, especially if you work in a jail, let's say, where you're going to be promoted within, is how you see yourself, but also how others see you, and then trying to adjust and elevate that perspective. When in some cases they may be holding you down, like, hey, remember when you were an officer? It's like, be careful. Like, I get it. I'm going to use my roots to move me forward, but don't use that to hold me back. So be careful how people use those terms, because some people could honestly say, hey, bring those core values with you to the top and continue growing. Or some people could be utilizing this, say, hey, no, stay here, stay down here. We don't need you to be, we want you to remember who you are and be our buddy. Okay, so this is a good one right here. We kind of touched on it before, but positional leaders place rights over responsibility. So when you move up the levels, positional leadership, as we said, is given authority. So they have the rights to lead, the right to have that authority. But you really got to eventually get people to want to have you as their leader. That's where it becomes in the permission side. It goes from I have to follow you to now I want to follow you. And for positional leaders, sometimes they get stuck in the power of authority that they're granted these rights, and they lean on those rights. So again, it's going back to, I'm your sergeant, I'm your lieutenant, and they're totally leaning on the rights of the position to enforce the rules, as opposed to building influence by working with your people, knowing that they are your responsibility. So how do I take care of them? I mean, as I said before, kind of reiterate, if I'm always focused on my rights as a supervisor, I'm not building any connection with my people, because I'm devaluing them. Every time they go to say something, I point to my collar, I say I'm a supervisor. You're not showing any appreciation for the people that you need to elevate you up. I think we kind of covered this, Russ, but do you have anything to close this thought off?
Yeah, if all you're doing is talking about what your position is, you've closed yourself off pretty much to additional responsibilities that maybe you should be taking on. Just because you're fulfilling your role as a sergeant, for instance, doesn't mean that maybe your lieutenant doesn't need some extra help. Maybe he needs you to step up and really do some things because he is in the process of stepping up and taking on some of the things that are going on with the captain, for instance. So I think that that's kind of the best way I can put it is I think that's a little bit self-limiting.
And it's true. It's 100% truly self-limiting, because here's the other thing, guys. If you're playing out your position and you're not listening to the people that work for you, or in some extent work with you, you're going to limit yourself as a leader. And if you limit your growth, so if you put a lid on your own growth, then you limit the growth of your people, and then you wind up limiting the growth of the agency. So having said that, you're right. The more you're closed off to the people that you want, we can learn from anywhere. We can learn from up, down, all around. So if you play the position to cut off the people below you, then you're never going to learn. And the problem is you're going to put a lead on your own leadership, and then the people that you supervise, they don't grow. Like if I'm, let's say, I know Maxwell says it best, but from a 1 to a 10, if I'm a level 3 leader, you can't expect a level 3 leader to be overseeing level 10 employees. It just doesn't happen. Eventually, the level 10 employees, they wind up getting pissed off and they wind up leaving. That's why for every agency that's losing people, you need to ask yourself, am I losing 10s or am I losing 3s? If I'm losing 3s, that's great. That means I may have some 10s in place and they're, holding these people accountable. But if I'm losing 10s, I got to go back to my leadership and say, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Why am I losing 10s? This is a good one. Positional leadership is often lonely. I watched a video one time with John Maxwell when he said that when people are positional, they tend to look to impress. And when you impress, you do it from a distance. He said he looks to make an impact, which means that he walks next to people and he takes them up the mountaintop. He's not playing king of the hill. He's not fighting with people to get to the top. And he goes, for people that say, well, it's lonely being at the top, he goes, you're not a real leader. Like if you're walking ahead and nobody is following you, then all you're doing is taking a walk, and it's powerful. Like when you get to the top and nobody's with you, then you failed, because your job as a leader is always to go towards your people and then bring them up with you, and in corrections, there's a lot of time to do that. I mean, in corrections, you're dealing with so many circumstances or so many situations that there's always a chance to sit down, break bread with your people, learn together, grow together. And at the end, you're both on the mountaintop together, sharing in on the victory. So when people say positional leadership is often lonely, it is, because you're playing the position and the position has more value than the people that you supervise. But Russ, you have to agree with that, Russ. People that play the position wind up doing it alone.
Once again, I think that's really, a function of failing to get those people to buy into your vision. If your vision is so narrow as to, hey, you know what, I'm the sergeant, I'm the lieutenant, or whatever, those people aren't gonna buy into that. They're not going to be the ones that are there to help you along the way. I think that it dispenses with true camaraderie. There's really nothing better as far as camaraderie goes than to be there day after day with people that you lead, people that you follow, and people that you've gone into battle with. It really shores those things up, and there's a real true brotherhood and a sisterhood in all of those things. But if you're just in it for just the position itself is just cold and lonely.
Yep. And guys, as I said, I mean, I've worked with people that they continue to move up, continue to move up, continue to move up. They gain position after position after position. They love having the newest title. They love having it. They love announcing it. And at the end, when they finally leave and they retire, they realize that they never did the most important part. Is when they look back, they never built relationships with their people. Because at the end, guys, position, when you get ready to retire and your time is done, all becomes superficial. because we all wind up looking back, seeing where we made an impact. And if you're just shooting for position after position, it's very selfish. But when you start trying to make impact and using that position to help others, then when you look back on the day you retire and look back to see what you've done, you're going to have so many moments of beautiful interactions in which you were able to influence another life in a better way. And again, if you're saying that you're up there and it's lonely, it's because you're playing your position. Go down and find your people. Leadership by walking around. Know your people. Know your people. I mean, that's the key. And that takes intentional effort. Leaders who remain positional get branded and stranded. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
So, I mean, that's kind of a little bit self-evident, but it's just that, when a person mentions your name and that name is never, just it by itself, it always comes with that title, whether it's, Sergeant Hamilton or Sergeant Gangi or Administrator Gangi and stuff. I think that, those people have just decided that you are only that title. You are only that position. You're not necessarily a real person. And if people can't relate to you as a real person, they can't help you. You can't guide them. And it just puts you back to the whole thing where we were talking about being lonely. If you're stranded, you're lonely.
Right. And I want to add something to this too, kind of touch on what Russ just said. This really also relates to your reputation. If you go in as a positional leader and you stay at that for a while, and then you realize, like, holy shit, I fucked up. Like, I really need my people. I got to stop being this person that, falls on this as my first and only resource. Well, the problem is that you're going to have to go against that reputation that you made for yourself. And that's what it means by being branded. I'm telling you something. Once you're a supervisor and you're playing that position and people look at you like, yo, you constantly think you're better than me because of your position and you treat me as such. Well, even when you realize you're wrong and you want to change yourself around, you've been branded. And the problem is that initial impression as you as a supervisor, even if you try to change later on, it's going to be hard for you to do that. That's why you got to get out of that immediately. Once you get that position, try to start building those relationships with your people to build some level of influence, because the last thing you want to do is get branded as someone that ultimately devalues individuals, because your position and the perks are a lot more important than the people that you supervise. And then here's what's happened when it becomes stranded. It's like, yeah, well, even if you do make the effort to talk to people, you put yourself on an island. So that's a lot different than bringing yourself up and being lonely. This is you literally devaluing people. And then even when you make the effort to connect, because you've been positional for so long, you're on an island. Nobody wants to talk to you. And I've worked with leaders like that, guys, 100%. And you could see it. I got a little quick thing on this. I've worked with supervisors that if I saw them on the outside, I would do whatever I can to avoid them. I would do whatever I can to avoid them because I didn't want to connect to them, because they made me feel less than myself. So when I'm with my family and I see them, I get that feeling again. I don't want anything to do with them, nothing to do with them. But on the adverse, I have ate with my family, and officers I've worked with have come up to me, introducing me to their family. So just the opposite of that. And that's when I knew, believe it or not, that's one of the ways I knew I was a good leader. When I was at Buffalo Wild Wings with my family and an officer came up who hadn't seen me for a while, and we shot the shit for a little bit. It meant so much to me because I know how it feels when I want to avoid that supervisor on the outside. But today this person came to me. That means I meant something to his life, and it's a moment I'll never forget. Literally, something as some people may see as superficial, but when you know the extreme, or at least in my mind, subjectively, what I feel it is, and then to know that person came to me, I automatically felt loved. I did it. It meant the world to me. That's a moment I will not forget, But Rush, I'm sure you've seen some people on the outside that you rather have ignored.
Yeah, gone and crossed the street to not run into them. Yeah, absolutely. But it's all the better though. You see someone that you haven't seen in many, many years, and they want to take the time with you. They want to sit there and talk about old times, talk about new times, share what they're doing, hear what you're doing. It's always a great thing, and that happens all the time. That's one of the great things about corrections is there's so many people that we meet along the way. Hundreds and hundreds, especially if you're in bigger organization.
Right. And I will tell you something right now, guys. In the end, we do need each other. And for the supervisors who, I mean, I bumped into a lot of people throughout my career as a supervisor. So the higher you go up, the chances are you're going to meet somebody that's, worked with you or worked for you. And if you haven't been recognized at a mall by now, especially if you live in the same community as the people you supervise, you need to ask yourself, am I doing something wrong? Because I bump into people all the time now. I mean, I've worked at 4 prisons across the state of New Jersey. So, and I always know somebody, ask my wife at this point. And we're always, and I give them all the time, even if I'm with my family, I give them all the time in the world because they're with theirs and we just shoot the breeze. And I make sure during those interactions that they know how much they appreciate it. Because during that interaction, it's not about me as a leader. It's about them. It's about them. This is your chance to tell their families how you feel about that individual, the importance of that individual. And in this profession, they never get that. Family doesn't know the sacrifices and the value behind those sacrifices. So if ever a chance I get to interact with a family member in the process of seeing somebody on the outside, I'd make it totally about the individual that came up to me, 100%. And in return, they'll say something nice as well. But it's just a beautiful interaction, even for my kids to see that. Because maybe one day as they get older, they'll remember me and say, well, I remember he was loved. I mean, I never got a chance to see what he did at work, but one day we were at a restaurant and one of his officers came up to him and he chatted with them and, he made a memorable moment for him and his family, and that's powerful, guys. I think so. That's a story maybe I could share one day. Russ, easy one here, but turnover is high for positional leaders. Why do you think that is?
That is, I guess the cheap, easiest explanation is the fact that when they're a positional leader and you're up there as an administrator, you have to find a place to put them. They can't operate necessarily in the harder corners of the correctional universe. So then it's incumbent upon you to maybe find a place where they have to lead a little bit less. You have to find a place where, maybe they're already at the top of the food chain, but they only have 1 or 2 underlings.
Right. And guys, hold on. Let me just, for me, with the turnover is high. If you're a positional leader and you are playing the position, you put a lid on yourself, but you also put a lid on the people that you supervise. And the issue with that is if there are good people that are working for you and they feel that you've placed a lid on their growth because you're unwilling to grow, because you want to stop and graze and enjoy the perks of the position without ever making any intentionality to grow and work with your people, the good people leave. 100%. The good people leave. And as we discussed before, as higher level management, we need to ask ourselves who's leaving and who's staying.
Yeah, Anthony, when I was looking at that, I was trying to figure out which position that was saying it from, because I was looking at it from the position of positional leaders. Is it their turnover that's high, or the people that they're supervising? And I think it goes both ways.
No, it does. Hold on, it does. But this is more over if you have because I got what you were saying before, and it's great to take it from the other perspective. But the other perspective here is when you play the positional route, how that could affect turnover in staff. So basically, the more you go on your position, to me, it limits your staff's ability to grow and develop. So therefore, when that occurs, good people leave. Especially the newer generation. A great way to test somebody's influence. I know in John Maxwell's book, he talks about working with volunteers of the younger generation, and we added inmates to that. But this is true here. If you're getting a lot of turnover, the agency has to ask themselves, what am I losing here? I'm losing 10s. Well, then maybe I have a supervisor that's a 3 and he's pushing them out or she's pushing them out. So do you have anything from that perspective?
Yeah, it is that thing is they can be pushing them out. I was in a position with a lieutenant that I despised, and he made sure that he got rid of me, and he put someone who he played softball with on the weekends. in my position. And of course, I was so ticked off about it that, and I had a lot of seniority, so I bid right back in to where that guy was, and I told him, right away, you came in here, but this is still my yard, this is still my area, and I exert more influence than you, and I'll be here when you leave. And that made him really mad, and then he was gone in about 2 months.
All right, we got one last one, then we get to wrap it up. This is important. This is very important. Positional leaders receive people's least and not their best. So I'll start off on this, Russ, if you don't mind. I'm going to do it quick, and I'll go right to you real quick. But guys, if you're playing the positional leader, if that's your route and you want to play your position, then guess what? So are your people. So usually when an agency grows, it grows based on people's willingness to take risk, think outside the box. Innovation really does come from the front line up. Growth of any agency really does come from the front line up. Sorry, I got the kids upstairs. Change can always be pushed down, but when you want to evolve and really grow, it comes from the bottom up. Now, having said that, if I'm a positional leader and I'm only given my position to move people, then people are going to give me their least. They're not going to take risk. They're not going to give me anything more than what's asked of them. And at the end of the day is we don't grow. I have literally put a lid on everything because at the end of the day, I'm playing my position and I'm expecting them to do more for me. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing anything for them because I'm staying to my position. So the exchange is unbalanced and quite unfair. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, I think that, it really shortchanges, the best followers, because what happens is even if they want to give their best, they're put in that position of uncertainty. They're put in a position where they're unbalanced. How do you expect them to charge forward if they don't have someone who's guiding them toward where forward is? So, it's just, it becomes its own, self-fulfilling anti-prophecy, if you will. These people that are really good, they're just not going to be able to function at that same level. They need a leader to bring out their best, no matter what kind of a self-starter they happen to be.
That's a good point you made, Russ, too, because you're right. A good leader will bring out the best of their people. What's funny is when you work with an agency that may have unions, and sometimes the unions may have an issue with you stretching your people beyond their comfort zone, I want the people to know that's a bad thing. If you have good leaders and they're trying to push more for your people, as a union, really don't try to hold your people so much to their position. Try to give them a chance to grow and learn, because I've seen people that moved into the higher position because they wanted to grow and they didn't realize, how big this profession could be because they had a union that pretty much kept them within their title. But we work in corrections. Sometimes we may have to go a little out of title to bring things back to normal. That's what we do. And that also opens up our horizons. So good leaders know how to motivate people and know how to inspire them to open up their eyes and see the bigger picture. And the last thing we want is when we're trying to get our people to grow is to have a conflict with people that are like, hey, listen, I know you asked the officer to do this and he was willing to do it, but that's way out of title and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but I did it because I'm trying to get them to see the bigger picture. Again, everything I've ever delegated to somebody is to kind of get them to learn. That's the key. And for people that are quick to play their position, it's like, okay, well, then you could do that all day. But at the end of the day, you're going to limit yourself. You're really going to limit yourself. So it goes both ways. I mean, again, if you're playing your position and then you expect people to want to grow and develop and do more, they're not. You play your position, they're going to play theirs. But on the adverse of that, if I'm looking to grow and I got people that are pretending to help me by holding me to my position, I have a problem with that too. So if I'm front line and I got people saying, no, you got to stay here. You got to stay here. You're making it look bad every time you do these things. It's like, well, I'm looking to grow. So I'm looking to help out the other departments because at the end of the day, we all have to work together as one. So, that ability to grow, take risk, it matters. Be innovative. Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing, sir?
Just this, we have a lot of officers who watch this, and they're down there on the front lines, in the trenches, and there's nowhere for them to go but up. And I want to encourage them to, make that leap, start thinking about what they can do as they, mature in their career, to how they're going to leave the department that they found. And I don't mean leave it physically or leave it when they retire. I mean, how is that place going to look once they're gone? Did they leave their mark? Did they put people in place that are going to, carry the fire and carry the message and try and, bring the best out of everybody possible? Corrections is conflict, and too often it's conflict that need not happen. We can do better. We have to do better. And one of the great things I think about Keepers of Chaos and Tier Talk is we are spreading that message, and that message is not lost. That message, I think, though, is going to take many years to come to fruition and to mature and to really start making the bigger impacts. But I think we are going to do it.
Yeah, and guys, when it comes to that message too, I mean, once we get it, we have to keep the momentum and keep it going, because trust me, the default is always going to be separation and isolation. I mean, so we have to do what we can every day to keep things together. So again, for this year, positional leader, don't be a positional leader. It's pretty quick. I mean, don't stay in that spot. Your next step would be to look to gain some influence by building relationships and eventually becoming productive and gaining credibility. So that's the key right now. The next step would be building influence by building relationships. And then at the next level, when you become productive, you're going to gain some more influence because you're doing stuff that's good for the organization. But then you also start gaining credibility because you're producing results, and then the last two levels we'll talk about on another day. But it definitely was a great discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you have people that are looking to become leaders, this would be a good video to show them. Not a lot of training, introducing people into the supervisory position. And I think this is a great video for those that are crossing into the supervisory position to kind of understand what it means to be that positional leader. I think me and Russ broke it down pretty well. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.